Paul's got the jingle bounce.
That's
Hello,
right.
everyone. I'm Kelly Schockler, and I'd like to welcome you to another first-rate episode of My Project Hell, where during the next 20 minutes, we're going to take you on a short journey into the ways and means of project management, and we're going to do our best to keep it real and relatable in a way that might help you look at project management a little differently without the jargon and the starched collar buttoned up nonsense.
That's right. And I'm Paul Thompson. In this episode, we're going to discuss a hot topic and we're going to work with a project manager in Coach's Corner to see if we can help her get out of a project hell that she finds herself in. Throughout this journey, I encourage you guys, join in on the conversation. Use the chat. Please share your ideas back and forth with everybody. If you have anything specific for Kelly and I, drop it in the Q&A, and if we have time, we'll try to address questions at the end. Kelly, where are we going with our hot topic today?
So I thought it would be fun if we talked about documentation hell. So when I said documentation hell, Paul, what came to mind for you?
Yeah, death by PowerPoint, right? Thousands of endless slides randomly strung together, no value, just vomiting up stuff.
Okay, that's interesting picture I just got in my head. I'm going to try and shake that.
Might want to.
So in my project management travels, I see that project documentation is usually something that project managers have a love-hate relationship with. I know I do. And I think it might generally be more on the hate side because I've met very few project managers who love, adore, and cherish the opportunity to document various aspects of the project. And it's especially more negative if you're in a PMO, maybe in an organization where the PMO has a ton of structure and rules around documenting every aspect of the project, and there's no regard for the size of the project or the type of project. So it's like this legalistic approach, which I think can add to the feeling of being tormented in a documentation hell, right? So on top of that, I sometimes get the feeling that no one really ever gives a darn about my documentation unless it's the business requirements. But outside of that, I don't know if any other PMs can relate to just feeling like nobody cares about your status report or your written project plan or whatever, right? So, I'm going to make a confession right now that recently I'm on an engagement right now, and I admitted to myself that at the end of the day, at the end of the project, whatever you want to call it, when it's all said and done, that most of the documentation we do, maybe outside of the business requirements again, is purely for ourselves as project managers so that we can lead our project team successfully. So, whether I'm putting together stakeholder analysis, a deployment and cutover plan, or a project planning document, it's really for me so that I can lead well. It helps me understand, what the heck it is the organization wants me to implement, helps me formulate my strategy, delineate my scope, my budget, my schedule, and think through the risk planning. And if I didn't submit myself to all of that stuff and writing it down and documenting it, I don't really think that I could be as effective as a PM. And so I feel like the very act of documenting serves as a vehicle to solidify approach and direction.
Okay, so you use that to really refine your thinking and distill down your plans and things like that.
Right.
Okay. Gosh, for me, document hell reminds me a bit that if you look, a lot of times it's just CYA, right? Cover your ass. Don't want to get caught out there that we didn't see this coming or whatever. And I think that's the wrong way. I know that's the wrong way to look at it, but I also don't think we need to document everything. I'm with you. If you don't need it, don't document it, but understand why you need it, right? Understand what you're doing this documentation for, right? Rick brought up that, he's got situations where they don't want to document in Agile, right? Oh, we're just creating as we go. Sure. What are you creating? What are we supposed to deliver? How are we delivering? Things like that, right? Engineers hate documentation. Software engineers, I know I fall into that category. I was one, right? It's kind of like pornography requirements. I don't know what they are, but when I show them to you, you'll know I hit it. So I want to avoid that situation because you have no way of being able to know how you got to where you are, which is really when I look at documentation, I see two things that we want to do. We want to know how we got here down the road, right? So that we could recreate it and figure out lessons learned or make adjustments, right? We should be continually applying lessons learned. And that's especially important in Agile, where your feedback loops should be relatively short. You need to have something to do those feedbacks on. The other thing we need to be able to do is to know where we're going, right? And that isn't necessarily the plan for every single thing that we're going to have to do between now and 6 years, but it is what's the deliverable set that we are expecting to get done in this chunk or in this project? What is the scope, right? Where are those boundaries that when we start to cross over to them, we're just dogpiling scope on ourselves and dying by death of 1,000 cuts for all those little ones. So for me, really, the documentation side is being able to tell the story of how you got there, as well as where you're going next.
Yeah, I just, thinking about the agile concept and product development, we're talking about project management, right? And what you need to do as the PM, the documentation basics that you need to do, which I do not think are optional as a PM, even with smaller projects. It's just how do you scale it, right?
Right.
But what's going to help me? Not worried about the engineers, but what's going to help me as a PM wrap my head around what the game plan is for the project and taking into account all my stakeholder strategy, and how does it support my narrative around the project when I have to do report outs, presentations, and provide those project sound bites to stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I just think moving through the right documentation helps project managers be more strategic and focused on the approach that they're using.
I like that. Also, reuse it, right?
Yeah.
You don't
Yes.
have to write the same bit of information 47 times. You need to build a cohesive set of documents that work together, not just repeat themselves. I think Karen brought up some pretty interesting points to kind of keep track of as well, right? Your completed stuff, your risks, your issues, all those things, especially the risks, right? Complex projects have tons of them, and they help you see around corners once you identify them. Kind of looking
right. You want documentation hell. That would be if you didn't do a RAID log, right? So
right.
All right, good discussion. So you ready for Coach's Corner, Paul?
I think so. Let's see what we've got here. We have Dani, who is a senior program manager at a local Seattle nonprofit. Welcome, Dani.
Hi, Dani.
Hi, everybody.
How are you doing today?
I'm great. It's good to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
No, we appreciate this. Tell us a little bit about the situation and how we can help, right?
Yeah, thank you. So I am new to my job. I'm in the nonprofit sector as a senior manager, and I'm not only new to my job, but I'm new to aspects of the job that I would say are new career paths for me. And so there is a lot of information coming my way. And as I think all of us have probably experienced, information, coming through in training through my supervisor. But I'm also meeting with other colleagues and receiving information. I'm attending meetings, and there are conversations that I'm not fully understanding. There are terms that are being used. There's material in spreadsheets, in written documents. I mean, it's all over the place. And I'd like to just find a way to collect the information and be able to use it, synthesize it, and use it in the most efficient way. So
Okay.
I could really use your help in that.
So what sort of things have been helpful to you in the past for getting your arms around these types of things?
Well, to be honest with you, in my career trajectory, there's some aspects, I mean, most of my aspects of my job were really familiar. So there are elements of my work that are really unfamiliar.
Okay.
And so I think in the past, I was just able to take notes. It was pretty fluid, pretty easy. It was organic. Because I'm in a, in a niche that I'm really pretty new to. I feel like all of my traditional coping mechanisms are out the window. And so traditionally, I would say I was just taking notes. Maybe I'd have an Excel spreadsheet, but nothing fancy. And
Mhm.
maybe there's nothing fancy for this either, right? It's just trying to wrap my head around, new ideas for coping in my new world,
Okay.
work
All
world.
right. Kelly, any questions? What are your thoughts here?
Well, I like that, Danny. Thanks for bringing this to the table, because I really don't think there's anyone here that's listening today who can't relate to that overwhelm we feel when we're at the bottom of a new learning curve. And whether you're there by choice, like you are in your new role, or by force, which sometimes can be worse when you're thrown into something new, or a new directive by your manager or your leaders, and your initial is, oh my goodness, this is a huge mountain I have to climb. Look at all the stuff I have to learn and grasp in order to achieve results. How long will this take? Will I ever make it? And so it's daunting, right?
Mhm.
Maybe a little depressing. I mean, especially if your trajectory is, long and steep, like it can be, you said, in an industry or an area that's new to you. I mean, and then you've got all your stakeholder expectations, right? Real or imagined in there. So a couple things that come to mind, that I've learned over the years, and it's try to employ when I'm on steep learning curves, and I actually have been on one of my own. So as a consultant, every time I'm dropped into a new role, I have to do this stuff or I will drown, right? And so I think the first thing is managing your overwhelm. So you said you probably have some tactics to do that, because if you don't manage your overwhelm, then you're going to be in a constant state of stress and anxiety, and that doesn't help anything. It just kind of shuts you down. So employing, it might sound corny to some, but employing self-talk helps, right? Okay, keep it simple. One thing at a time, one day at a time. This is only going to hurt for a minute. I will come into some understanding. So that's the first thing I think, is managing your overwhelm and finding some whatever works for you to do that. And then the second thing is I use the heck out of OneNote. OneNote for me is, if something happened to my OneNote, I think I would just walk away from what I was doing. I take lots of notes, I organize them, and so organize them in something useful for you. You can record things, you can write it down. So this process of writing and typing information, it gets it into your brain. So I mean, even if you forget where you wrote it down, your soul knows that you wrote it down, and then you can go into search bar and find it. But I really find putting things, emails, attachments, and using the heck out of OneNote is really key. And then the third thing is validating things that you're fuzzy on. Double check understanding about what you're learning, especially if it's not gelling. There's that adage, there's no stupid questions. There are no stupid questions. Ask a couple of different people. And usually you're going to get some additional insight by asking a couple people about something that you haven't been able to grasp. That'll really be useful. So those are three things that I use to help move myself through that steep learning curve more efficiently, rather than just sitting there and taking the fire hose of new information and getting blasted into oblivion and just staying at the bottom of the curve. I don't know. Does any of that resonate for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It never occurred to me to use OneNote. I was, just using my file folders, I'm pretty organized, but having everything kind of at my fingertips really easily, makes sense. And of course, managing the overwhelm is key, because it wouldn't matter what organizational system I had. If I'm overwhelmed and I'm not able to process, it won't be of use. So for sure. And then I love your idea of talking to different colleagues, even about the same subject, to get differing perspectives and to, paying them for their knowledge base. And folks have been very kind and very willing to help. And I think for me, it's just leaning. So it's leaning on people, and then also being concerned that I'm bothering somebody, right? So I've been feeling that out. And generally speaking, I think that folks are very, very willing to help. So I just need to just decide to do it, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I I like that you want to lean into this, right? Because I love being at the bottom of a learning curve. For me, that's the fun of this role. So I kind of got a weird sense of what I like. How I've found the things I've found that help me get up those steep learning curves, especially on big complex projects that I just, usually I'm coming in and they're in the ditch. So it's not like I get to start with a clean slate. First thing I do is figure out scope. And I mean, scope, what's in scope, what's out of scope. And as you said, start asking a lot of people, what do they think is in scope? And make sure that you're documenting what people say is out of scope as well, because oftentimes that becomes the assumption, right? Somebody didn't hear it was in scope, but they didn't hear it was out of scope. So in their mind, sure, that's one of the things we're going to get. And before you know it, this grows. So kind of getting, how big is my bread box, right? If you can get that and you're comfortable with that, you've now kind of put your boundaries up and you've got a place to start.
Yeah.
The other, and really it's just about kind of tell me, interview questions. Tell me about what we're delivering here. Just keep it as a conversation, and they'll give you, and you'll find the scope out of those conversations. The next thing I do is I sit down with my RAID log, which is risk, assumptions, issues, and decisions. It can be an Excel spreadsheet. It can be a OneNote. The format doesn't matter. But what I try to do is sit down with a bunch of different people one-on-one and just sort of tell me the story of how we got here, right? Oh, well, we ran into this when we started out and this. And, I've been telling everybody that they're going to have these problems, but nobody listens to me. And I'm like, okay, risk. Okay, here's an issue. Oh, and then they cut the budget in half. Okay, decision. Who made that decision, right? But now I sort of got the story of how we got here, and I can then take the scope and the risk back to the project owner, the steering committee, and go, okay, you guys dropped me into an interesting opportunity. Let's see if I understand it. Because oftentimes senior management's memory of things is a little fuzzy, right? Because their job is looking forward all the time. So, oh yeah, we did sort of cut your budget in half. And then, oh yeah, we pulled all of your staff from the project for 2 months. Okay, I guess, yeah, and we probably got to fix that. But now you know where you are and how you got here. And those two things, just understanding scope and then documenting through people's discussions, all the risks, assumptions, I'll tell you, are huge, because those are undocumented risks, right? Somebody thinks that something's there. So anytime you can go, well, I assume we're doing this, grab it and document it. But with those two items, I can usually figure out the rest and just start asking for help based on that information. Those have been helpful for me. I hope they give you some ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah, the piece around assumptions being risks is really helpful. And I've entered at a time where I think most of us can relate with COVID, right? Sure. During times of great change and transition, businesses are reevaluating how they do things. And so I've entered into that, and they're, my organization's in the midst of that. So there is a lot of gray area, and I think really understanding and not making assumptions, especially when I'm told like, I'm not sure. And it's like, okay, well, what do I, yeah, it's not really always knowing what to do with that either. And
Mhm.
I think managing scope is really interesting for me because I typically get really excited about things I'm passionate about and then want to do a bunch of stuff.
Right.
Right. And so it's like I have to manage myself.
I kind
So
of
Don't we
refer to
all?
that as death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's no one
Yeah.
big thing. It's all these little things that exactly we get excited. Sure, we can do that. Yes, we can help you
for
there.
sure. Yeah.
And
Gets
the
me in trouble.
pile.
Well, I don't know about you, Paul, but I could keep going here, but we're at time. And Dani, I hope there's some things here that you might be able to take away and use. We'd sure
Absolutely.
like to hear from you, and drop us a line maybe in a month or two
Please.
at myprojecthell@gmail.com, and just let us know how it's going. We love hearing follow-up from our guests. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely, Dani. Look forward to hearing how it all goes. And I guess it is time for us to wrap up this episode of My Project Hell. I hope everyone did enjoy it as much as Kelly and I did. We have fun doing this. Please catch us on replays at My Project Hell episodes on our YouTube channel. And if you guys, anyone's interested in joining us in Coach's Corner, please drop us an email at myprojecthell@gmail.com.
And next time, Paul and I are going to talk about getting out of the weeds for our hot topic, and we'll feature another intrepid project manager in our Coach's Corner. So quick reminder, there's a survey that you'll get at the end of this session, and a link in our follow-up email. Use that link to take the survey, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Have fun, everyone.
Thank you for being here today.